Hi guys, I am Roranoa. This video is about what if Gohan was sent to Naruto World and became a part of Shinobi Part 6. Hope you like my video. Please subscribe, like and share Roranoa TV for more fanfiction crossover videos. Gohan landed on his feet, seemingly without taking any damage from the fall. While the giant lizard entertained the monster, he grabbed Sasuke by the shoulder and took him back to the forest in the blink of an eye. The Uchiha was surprised once again by the half-blood Saiyan, this time being because of his speed. "I'm sorry for taking you here like this, but you have no chance in this battle." He scratched the back of his head as he was laying on a tree in front of the genin. "What?" Sasuke said as glanced at his sides. "What do you mean I have no chance? Your energy isn't great enough to beat such an enemy, I'm sorry." Gohan finally said before running back at the battle. Once he arrived back to the plains in which the battle was held, he aimed a kick at the monster's leg, causing certain imbalance to it, although not as much as the Saiyan had expected. He now aimed a punch, but the monster kicked him away, leaving the Saiyan several meters into the forest. The lizard struggled to retain the monster. The one-tail tackled the lizard multiple times, which began to crack one of the two giant kunai the reptile held in its paws. It was forced to change the strategy and jump to a side, which gave free space for the creature to escape, although it didn't seem to be its intentions this time. Its tail was nearly cut as it tried to evade the monster's claws. This alerted the lizard of the disadvantage it was in. His shirt had been damaged in the impact, and he noticed it when he stood up. He ignored the state of his clothes and ran back to the battle. The monster was able to spot him, but he flew over its arm. The Saiyan was now on the creature's shoulder, a position he exploited to land a punch directly on its neck. His fist went through its neck, its skin was similar to sand. A cry was followed by an incredible amount of chakra, that pushed Gohan out of the shoulder and the lizard further from the battle. This amount of energy was nothing like he'd seen before in this world, and in fact, it was even more similar to his ki than to the type of energy the people he'd known possessed. His eyes snapped open as he finally put attention to the creature's energy, noticing until now how great it was. Before he could try and sense his friend's energies, the claws of the monster took him by surprise and struck the half-blood Saiyan. The lizard reacted immediately, throwing one of its kunai at the monster's head. The one tail deflected the giant kunai, but only to find the lizard stabbing its stomach with the second one. Gohan crashed against the floor, although it didn't take long for him to stand up again. This is way harder than I thought," he said, glancing at the monster as it absorbed the giant kunai into its body. "This thing seems to be almost entirely energy, similar to Broly." The Saiyan glanced behind him to the forest. The Uchiha ignored the half-blood's instructions, joining the battle either way. He had noticed Gohan's ability to fly, but he didn't care, he still needed to show he was stronger than anyone. With great speed, he almost reached the monster's feet, but he was anticipated and kicked back to the forest. Sasuke crashed against a tree before even entering the forest. He could swear that he heard several things snap once he hit the tree. "Damn it, Sasuke," Gohan thought after witnessing the genin's useless attempt to do anything to defeat the monster. He was just like Vegeta, maybe he should help the genin change before something worse happened, but that would be later. After checking that the Uchiha was still alive, he stood up straight and released an astounding amount of energy. Even the lizard got distracted from its struggle when the Saiyan's white aura exploded. The one tail pushed the lizard back, leaving it in the floor. It turned to stare at the kid, whose aura caused even the floor to tremble. The creature considered the possibility of losing its life. Within an instant, Gohan's fist was already some centimeters apart from the creature's right eye. The one tail's response was to open its mouth, which forced the Saiyan to fly back to evade its fangs. He then gasped as the monster pounded him down with its enormous tail, not being able to hold the impact. Afterwards, the half-blood ran out of the crater and flew up once again, this time landing a powerful punch right where the one tail had been stabbed previously, recovering the lost kunai and throwing it back to the lizard. And with no more than a punch, he thrust the creature back to the lizard, who didn't waste time and jumped to nail the giant kunai on the monster's head. Unfortunately, the monster's giant tail struck the reptile away, knocking down several trees as it went through the forest. Gohan felt the animal's energy decrease considerably in an instant. It was knocked out. Gohan increased his power slightly more before flying towards the monster at a slightly greater speed than before, landing a kick on its face and then a punch on its forehead. "Masenko!" he yelled, after putting his two hands on his forehead and then extending them in front of his chest. A yellow energy wave was released from his hands, hitting the monster's head directly as the Saiyan flew over it. Gohan landed in front of the one tail as it places its hands on its head, a cloud of dark smoke covering it. After many screams, the monster finally went silent once the smoke faded, revealing the current state of the head. Its forehead now presented a hole, which made Gaara's body visible. Gohan widened his eyes, thinking for a moment that he was dead. This fear vanished once he was able to feel a weak energy signal inside the unstable and monstrous energy of the one tail. This complicates things, the half-blood Saiyan said as he went back to his fighting stance. I need to take him out of there, then I can handle with the monster. While they advanced through the village, they witnessed fights and deaths all around the place. They were glad that at least they had a path to follow, it being the one left by the monster after breaking through the wall of the arena. Roads and houses were destroyed, many corpses thrown all throughout the path they were following. And, naturally, many of them were terrified of what could have happened to their families or other loved ones. It was true that they knew that their friends and teammates were alive, but the uncertainty about everyone else remained. The improvised group of genin moved forward through the destroyed village in AV formation, leaving Neji and Choji in the flanks. The positions were decided by Shikamaru, who analyzed the best characteristics of each one of them. Neji and Choji were chosen for their places in the flanks because of their better potential to defend of any possible attack they could receive. Meanwhile, Naruto and Nara himself stood at the sides of Ino, who was in the middle of the formation, as they had more potential when they were needed to engage in battle, mainly due to Naruto's abilities shown in his recent match, as well as Shikamaru's and Yamanaka's special techniques. In their reunion, those who knew Nara from before, as well as Neji, were surprised at his great capacity of planning. They had always known him for being lazy and annoying, but to make him do such plans made them see him in a new light. Said formation now made it easier for them to advance at a great speed through the debris of certain buildings, as they now had less vulnerability from enemy attacks. They finally reached the walls of the village, a segment that had already been broken through. The group jumped through the hole in the wall, one by one. Neji, who was the last one to jump through, took longer than he should to do as he was required to. Shikamaru reacted almost immediately, not wanting to risk anything. He beckoned the rest to follow him as he noticed what had happened. Neji blocked the constant attacks of a trio of shinobi from the grass, his style making it easier to handle them. Despite this, he still struggled to block many of the attacks he received, requiring at times to jump back to get more space. This situation didn't last much longer, as Shikamaru was quick to enter the battle with a barrage of kunai. And behind him, the other three arrived as well. Ah, more from the leaf. One of them, a mask covering his face up to his nose, said. His forehead protector was green and had the symbol of the grass carved in it. Unfortunate, indeed. Another one, with short hair and glasses, added. He wore the typical vest given to the shinobi with the rank of Chunin or higher. And just I thought we were getting the eyes of a member of the Hyuga clan. A third one said, with long hair that reached the shoulders and covered half of the face. Will we need to get serious, Toshiro? Probably. He answered as he took his glasses off and put them in a fancy cage with a circular symbol in it. Let's be sure, at least. Come on, Jun, the masked shinobi said, you don't think this guys will need us to get serious, right? His moderately long and spiky hair blocked the symbol of his village as he started laughing. Neji didn't waste any more time and landed a palm in the masked shinobi's chest, leaving him gasping for air. Then, he aimed for the chin, but the shinobi of the glasses threw a kunai that managed to rub his nose. Choji intervened, his hand transforming into a giant version of itself after making several hand seals. The one of the long hair took a scythe out from the back, reaching the remaining three genin of the leaf and aiming to cut their heads multiple times. Naruto, with a kunai in his hands, jumped from Shikamaru's back and managed to cut a portion of the long hair of the enemy, who growled in anger. Jun threw the scythe to the blonde, who dodged it without much trouble. Uzumaki dashed towards his opponent, aiming a punch to the ribs. He failed due to the loose tunic worn by his opponent, which made it difficult for him to identify where the body was. He evaded the scythe once again before being kicked in the face. No one touches my hair and lives, Jun said, his purple eyes capturing the blonde genin's attention. However, Ino kicked the shinobi of the long hair back, avoiding the possibility of the scythe cutting the blonde's limbs or head. The blonde kunoichi charged against the shinobi of the long hair, avoiding the scythe constantly and landing a kick on the ribs of the opponent. Naruto followed her with a punch in the face and a low sweep, which gave the blonde kunoichi the opportunity to punch the opponent down. Once in the ground, the shinobi of the long hair raised the arms in a sign of surrendering, expressionless. Choji tried to smash the one of the glasses, but his speed was superior. This led to the Chunin of the grass to hit his opponent several times. Akamiki's physique made it easier to resist the hits, though, carrying on with the same strategy for a while. Neji, on the other hand, was thrashing the one of the face mask. Palm after palm, his breathing got heavier and movements slower. The prodigy knew this, but he wouldn't stop until his opponent was totally defeated. He would never underestimate an enemy again. The user of the Byakugan finished his barrage of attacks with a palm in the head that nailed the masked shinobi's face nailed in the ground. Once he was in the floor, he was finally able to cough up blood. The Hyuga ran to help his fat ally almost immediately after. Toshiro widened his eyes as his ribs were hit by the prodigy, who then aimed for the chin, just what his current opponent had prevented some seconds prior. The Chunin of the grass was able to evade the palm, although he wasn't able to avoid Choji's giant hand, which smashed him. Surprisingly, though, the hand was raised only to find a crushed piece of wood. The Chunin had escaped. Seeing that his two teammates had been defeated, he took a decision. He squatted for a moment, coughing up blood and then wiping it off from his mouth. And just when the genin from the leaf got closer to him, he disappeared into a cloud of smoke along with his defeated comrades. Dang it, they escaped. Naruto said. Whatever, let's focus back on the mission. Shikamaru said as he uninterestedly turned back and jumped through the wall. In a partially destroyed building, the defeated team of shinobi from the grass was hiding. The Chunin observed as the genin from the leaf jumped through the hole of the wall and left. His teammates were resting in two abandoned and burnt couches they found in the house. He turned back once he figured they were safe, sitting down in the floor in front of them. A burnt and partially destroyed wall hid them from the outside. It was just enough for the three of them to rest for a moment. Wow, we were destroyed by those guys, Jun said with a slightly sarcastic tone, and they didn't even have a Chunin in their team. Maybe, but they had a Hyuga and two more shinobi than us. Toshiro explained. I was pathetic out there, the one of the green forehead protector said as he removed his face mask, revealing a burn scar on his left cheek. At least you managed to hit them, but I was just thrashed by that guy. That guy was a member of the Hyuga clan, a user of the Byakugan, the Chunin said as he put his glasses back on. You can't blame yourself for losing against a guy that defeated even a Chunin like me. They still swept the floor with our miserable bodies, nothing changes that. Jun stood up from the couch only to lay on the floor. And we want to assume power in the village like this. I mean, you were starting to believe when I became Chunin last year, don't be so negative now. Toshiro said before finally standing up. Let's go, my dear pessimistic friends. Gohan flew towards the monster, breaking the sound barrier when doing so. He delivered a kick with the enough strength to push the creature sidewards. Unbalanced, the one-tail struggled to respond to the attack, being defenseless when the Saiyan punched its face. A scream from Gaara astonished the Saiyan, which gave the monster the space and time to defend itself. Its giant tail struck once again, but this time Gohan was able to stop the tail right before hitting the ground. The short grass underneath him moved violently due to the gust the impact provoked. The Saiyan created a small energy ball on each of his hands, burning the creature's tail and forcing it to take it away. He positioned himself in front of the one-tail's abdomen, his hands adopting the exact same position they had some minutes prior. Masenko. This time, lighting came out of his hands right before the energy blast emerged from them. The blast got progressively bigger as it went forward, passing through the creature's stomach in a matter of seconds. Gohan flew to the monster's head to recover Gaara. However, a sand spear came out of the one-tail's neck, blocking his way towards Gaara. It had gone through him. After retreating back to the grassland close to the forest, he managed to get the sand spike from his arm, which turned into regular sand after doing so. What? How did this happen? He was barely able to move his injured arm, which reminded him of the battle against Cell. My body is more vulnerable for some reason. With his eyes closed, he liberated more of his energy, causing his white aura to increase in size. He voluntarily avoided Super Saiyan, he didn't think of it as necessary. And he proved himself right when he flew towards the monster and blew its right arm up with an energy ball. The scream of the one-tail caused the tree to tremble, but Gohan didn't seem to be affected by it. In the blink of an eye, the Saiyan had already taken the red head from the monster's forehead. He landed in the grasslands, close to Sasuke. Then, he glanced back up to check on the one tail, finding that the monster was now falling apart. Gohan looked back to the redhead, finding that his energy had decreased considerably. And when he turned back to the monster, it had already become a pile of sand. So that thing is connected to him. The Saiyan went back to Sasuke and checked his pulse. He was still breathing. Gohan also checked for the lizard's energy, but it had disappeared. Maybe it had died, and so he went to check on the forest. A row of destroyed trees and a crater was everything he could find. And before he could theorize on the situation, he noticed several energies approaching him. The Saiyan put Gaara next to Sasuke and got in his fighting stance. Hey, he said with a wide smile on his face, lowering his arms. Naruto was the first one to come out of the forest, waving at Gohan once he was able to recognize him. Shikamaru, Choji and Ino followed the blonde. And behind them, Neji stared carefully at the Saiyan with his Byakugan still activated. They were surprised to find Sasuke and Gaara defeated in the floor while he was standing with just a wounded arm. Are you okay? Ino ran to grab the Saiyan's arm. What happened to you? She covered the deep wound with one of her bandages. That guy did it to me. Gohan pointed at the unconscious redhead. He turned into a really big monster when I tried to take him to the nursery back in the arena, and then that giant lizard helped me and Sasuke fight that thing. A giant lizard? Shikamaru asked while trying to find the giant animal his friend was talking about. Oh, like that giant toad. Naruto said while the Saiyan tried to explain himself. Shikamaru finally shrugged, already knowing that summoning things and animals was possible. What he couldn't ignore, though, was that Sasuke seemed to have been thrashed while Gohan only got a wound in his arm. Anyways, we should take Sasuke to the hospital. I'm pretty sure he has several broken bones. Gohan said as he grabbed the Uchiha, causing everyone's jaw to drop. Yeah, and this guy too. Run. We have to save Sasuke. Ino desperately yelled as she pushed Gohan forward, further damaging his purple shirt. Neji grabbed the redhead and ran behind the group as they left back to the village through the forest. He already knew that something was weird about that Gohan. If he was able to beat the guy that wiped the floor with the boy of the two dojutsus as well as Lee, he had to be pretty strong. Half an hour had gone by since the third Hokage and Orochimaru had gotten themselves in that position. Enma still held the sword that was no more than a couple centimeters away of killing off the old man. The Monkey King was skeptical about his old friend being able to seal the enemy's soul entirely. He had to finish this now before he bled to death. As stubborn as he was, he didn't give up until he felt his arms getting weaker. He figured what his only remaining move was, and prepared to finish the technique. His remaining chakra gathered in his palms as he struggled to keep on breathing. Hiruzen glanced back at Enma, nodding as if he told something to it. Orochimaru's eyes snapped open as the phantom of a demon with a white tunic appeared from behind his mentor. He recognized the figure immediately. It was the death god. The man with the snake traits knew the battle was already over, but he never stopped trying to pull his sword further into the third's body, which Enma always prevented from happening. The death god used its sword and cut the chakra from Orochimaru's arms. A drop of sweat came down the Sannin's forehead when he became unable to move his arms. And yet, for some reason, he felt relieved deep inside. So that's everything you managed to do, huh? The Sannin said as he saw his mentor fall down in front of him. He didn't take much longer to make his next decision. Now, retreat. Enma went to Hiruzen, who was still holding to his life. It grabbed the old man, noticing the hardly curable wound he now had in the middle of the chest. The Monkey King turned to look at the Junin waiting outside the barrier, and then back to the third. Enma, thanks. The Hokage said, struggling to breathe and coughing up blood after every failed attempt at talking. One last thing, this time, he coughed a lot more blood than before, concerning the Monkey King. When Konohamaru turns 13, give him the contract. Right, it said while nodding. And just like that, the third's flaming heart stopped beating. As the Monkey King disappeared into a cloud of smoke, the barrier finally disappeared. Yuichi was already next to the dead Hokage a second after the barrier dissipated, but Orochimaru had already gone out of sight for them. Behind him, Hayate and Kakashi joined to see their now deceased leader. Yuichi struggled to believe such a thing, but he felt forced into doing so. He had served the third Hokage in the years of his rule following the death of his successor, the fourth. And even after many years of serving him directly, of spending so much time with him, he felt as if his death was a good thing in the long run. He could say many good things about his personality, but he would still not feel any type of grief at the sight of his dead body. Did he hate the man? Was it because of the Uchiha massacre? No, that's impossible, he hates the Uchiha. Right. He doubted he'd ever be able to find the reason of such feelings, but what he knew, is what his plans were for the future of the village. Hopefully, Jiraiya will help him in doing so. It seems like they'll retreat. The grandson of the second said, glancing back at his colleagues. Inform about the Hokage's death. Right. Kakashi and Hayate responded before leaving the roof. The Sannin ran through the roofs of the houses and buildings of what once was his home. His minions surrounded him, every single one of them being ready to defend their leader. He never expected for the battle to go as it did, he had planned it for years and yet he didn't manage to go out of it without any damage. That damned Sarutobi was always annoying, and this battle wouldn't break that tradition, of course. Every step forward he took and did not feel his arms, his frustration and anger grew. Orochimaru forced himself to calm down, though, as someone unexpected got in their way. A purple-haired woman, her suggestive outfit being totally ignored by the one that was once her mentor, her father figure. He noticed her hands trembling, which caused nothing more than his smile to widen. Enko couldn't ignore that smile, forcing herself to calm down even when she wasn't able to. Surrender, now, she extended her arms, letting a couple of snakes out of her sleeves, I won't hesitate to kill you all. Oh, Enko, it's been a while. The Sannin's typical smile was difficult to hide. Shut up and surrender, Enko said, pointed her arms at her former mentor. Don't talk like that to Lord Orochimaru. Tayuya jumped in front of her, taking her kunai out and pointing it to the woman's neck. If you try anything, we'll kill you. Calm down, she's an old acquaintance. He beckoned the pink-haired girl to back off. Now, Enko, will you let us go now? I don't think it would be convenient for the leaf to lose you. I don't care, she angrily yelled, and only a second after realizing what she said, she covered her mouth in shame. Because I will. You can join us if you want to, you're always welcome to the village hidden in the sound. Orochimaru smiled, this time in a less creepy way than usual. You were the first one, after all, I owe you many discoveries. The Sound Four turned to their leader in shock, but it suddenly vanished as the Sannin beckoned them to surround the woman. Enko was surprised to see this, her doubt disappearing due to the sensation of being in danger. She gathered her chakra in her hands as she put them together, which was noticed by the man with the snake traits. She jumped back, but was stopped by the orange-haired shinobi, forcing her to throw several snakes from her sleeves at him. Orochimaru's minions didn't take long to react, organizing themselves and attacking the enemy kunoichi in unison. Kitamura jumped back as he took his bow out, aiming an arrow at her head. Tayuya, on the other hand, charged against the purple-haired kunoichi, her kunai in hand. And before the remaining two members of the Sound Four could respond, Kabuto appeared and blocked their way. Enko took a step back as she figured who had just saved her. She only needed his identity to guess what his intentions were, and they surely weren't that good. She thought of the idea of calling for help and trying to resist, but she finally decided to leave the place. Lord Orochimaru did not order you to attack her, Kabuto angrily pointed out as he took his glasses off, don't you ever do something without his explicit orders. Oh, thanks, Kabuto, but I did order them to surround her. Orochimaru calmly said before running quickly towards the purple-haired kunoichi and getting on her way. And you, where are you going? This isn't over yet. What do you mean? Enko answered with a firm tone, one the Sannin could look through. You can't use your arms, right? You have no chance. That's not the point, dear, he shook his head, you have to choose between two options, you join us or you die right here. His confidence drew a smile on his face, a really big one. Enko's eyes became white as something hit her neck. Behind her, Kabuto had taken the chance to end it once and for all, figuring that they couldn't waste any more time in the matter. His master nodded in response of his question. He grabbed the woman and followed the group once it continued the retreat. Kakashi had already left the roof of the arena when a cloud of smoke appeared in front of Hayate, which took the Junin by surprise. Yuichi glanced back at his colleague, noticing a long tail come out of the smoke. The giant lizard went out of it, lacking one of its giant kunai while the other one had a crack on it. It didn't seem to be really happy about something and Hayate noticed right away. Why did you send some kids to fight against a tailed beast? Its yellow eyes noticed the presence of the trees left in the roof. That's so irresponsible and stupid. Hayate's eyebrow raised as he crossed his arms. A tailed beast. He tried to remember what the monster looked like, and even when he remembered its appearance, he was unable to identify it as such. Was that really a tailed beast? Yuichi had already turned towards the seemingly sick man, his arms crossing as well. He never ceased to be surprised at the sight of such giant animals with clothes on, even at his 36 years of living. It indeed was, the lizard responded with a harsh tone towards him, the one tail, to be specific. So who went there? Yuichi asked immediately after the lizard finished the explanation. He assumed those kids the lizard was talking about were dead, so he was curious about who they were. The lizard turned to the silver-haired Junin, recognizing the red tattoos that were painted on his face. A descendant of the second Hokage. It noticed that he wasn't really all that happy about being recognized as such, so it went on to answer his question. I don't know their names, but they were an Uchiha and a boy with really developed muscles. Surprising for the age he appears to have. They didn't die, right? Hayate nervously asked as Yuichi stared furiously at him. No, the lizard said, relieving the seemingly sick man, that boy of the muscles managed to handle it when not even I could do so, although I cannot say the same for the Uchiha. Before it could add anything else, the silver-haired Junin interrupted as he put his hand on his chin. Are you telling me that Son Gohan handled the one tail by himself? The lizard nodded in response, which left both shinobi speechless for a moment. As far as we're concerned, that kid is not older than 12 years old. Was the old man right when he said he was a greater prodigy than? Come on, Tatsuno, it's impossible that a kid of no more than 12 years of age can defeat a tailed beast. Hayate believed it to be a joke and tried to get his lizard friend to confess it. However, the only response he got was a negative one. It wasn't a joke. The old man was right, Yuichi couldn't believe that came out of his mouth. It is crucial that Son Gohan stays in the village hidden in the leaves. Why? To turn him into a killing machine like the fourth Hokage. The lizard never liked the ways of the shinobi, but it usually reserved its comments. Liking Hayate didn't necessarily mean that it liked the other shinobi. A vein emerged from the silver-haired Junin's forehead as he heard such a comment. I value humanity, unlike many other shinobi. He said with a surprisingly calm voice, which suddenly turned into a deeper and more menacing tone. And don't you ever dare refer to my friend as a killing machine. The grandson of the second Hokage left the roof, leaving only the giant lizard and the seemingly sick man. Idiot, was everything Hayate could add to the conversation. You just don't talk about such things in front of him, it's quite an important issue for him. When the group arrived at the hospital to get some medical attention for Sasuke and Gaara, they found that their other friends were already there, sitting in the waiting room. And once they noticed the others had arrived, they ran towards them to see if they were okay. It was then when the group that came from the outskirts of the village noticed that some of their friends weren't in the same room. Gohan supposed they were receiving the medical attention they needed after their respective Chunin exams matches. And for such reason, his concern was directed towards finding someone that healed the two injured shinobi they brought to the hospital, ignoring his own wound. They managed to find a medical shinobi that wanted to heal the pair, but once she approached them, a pair of shinobi from the sand took the redhead from Neji's arms. The Hyuga tried to stop the one of the full-body black suit, but failed to land his palm on his back due to a smoke bomb the girl threw at the last moment. Everyone in the hospital panicked, and there was quite a lot of people in the waiting room. Many nurses swiftly went to the room to try and calm them down. The smoke covering the entire room and the screams made it quite difficult, but they eventually managed to get rid of the smoke with wind-style ninjutsu. Gohan also helped with a gust of wind created by him, focusing his ki on his hand and then emulating a punch. It was a really simple technique for him. Meanwhile, Neji wanted to follow the pair of sand shinobi, but was interrupted by a hand that was placed on his shoulder before he could so. He turned to find his brown-haired teammate, who seemed to be relieved of his well-being. The Hyuga genius abandoned the idea of leaving for the sand shinobi once he saw her smile. So, how is Lee doing? Neji asked, surprising his teammate. Well, he's being taken care of right now, but they said he'd be fine. Fortunately, that other guy saved him from worse injuries. Tenten couldn't hide her surprise while answering his question. She wasn't to blame, though, as seeing Neji care about someone was quite a shock. Did I say something weird? The Hyuga prodigy asked. His teammate wasn't able to respond as they were distracted by the discussion between Gohan and his blonde teammate. Sasuke had already been taken by a nurse, but for some reason he didn't want to have his wound treated, which seemed to really bother Ino. The thought it was weird for him not to want to be treated, but they didn't really give it much thought as the Saiyan ended up accepting treatment. After that, a brown-haired girl stood up to take his friend home, as he was in a wheelchair due to his injuries. Neji knew him quite well, and in fact even grew up along with him. In his eyes, Nobuyuki had always been a weak and weird kid, someone that didn't deserve to be a member of his clan. This vision started to change once he revealed the ability to use both the Byakugan and the Sharingan. See that guy in the wheelchair? Neji pointed at Nobuyuki as his teammate pushed him out of the hospital. Tenten nodded, wondering why he would even be mentioning him. Well, we always hated him, and if I'm honest, I think I'm the only one that respects him a little. Why? Tenten asked while still not knowing the reason to mention that. Oh, sorry, I just felt like telling you this. He scratched the back of his head while his teammate laughed. He also noticed something, though, he suddenly felt freer. Yakumo couldn't help but to feel uncomfortable with all the members of the Hyuga clan looking at them with disdain. They even reached a point in which she tried her best not to make eye contact with any of them. Nobuyuki had lowered his head a while ago, right when they entered the Hyuga clan's section of the village. The brown-haired girl was quite sure that he was already used to it. After some more minutes of walking, the half-blood Hyuga pointed towards his house. They had finally arrived. She pushed him towards the white door of his house. It was a small house, with no real luxurious detail, quite a humble one compared to the rest. He raised one of his eyebrows as he noticed that the entrance of his house didn't have the lock. Nobuyuki was startled by this detail, but he managed to slow down his breathing before opening the door. Hey, Dad, he exclaimed with a seemingly happy tone, although something felt off about it. Dad, maybe he isn't home, Yakumo asked as he noticed the concerned expression of her teammate. The door wasn't locked, Nobuyuki replied, desperately rolling the wheels of his chair to get to his father's room. Maybe he was in a hurry. She tried to convince him that his father was fine, but even herself knew that something had probably gone wrong, especially after an invasion. The brown-haired girl heard something hitting the floor. She dashed to the room her teammate had gone, hearing his teammate's cracking voice calling for his father. What she found there caused her to gasp in horror as she covered her mouth with her hand. It was a small room, which would be expected from the size of the house itself. It didn't have much furniture, just the essentials, like a bed and a nightstand next to it. The light of day entered the room through a window in the wall behind the bed. However, the color of the bed was ignored by the girl, and it was natural to do so. The corpse of a brown-haired, middle-aged man was laying in there, with his clothes stained by his own blood. The red liquid seemed to be coming mainly from the cut in his throat, but it was really hard to tell as he also had wounds all around his visible body parts. Whoever had done it, had something against him, Yakumo had no doubt about it. The way that man seemed to have died was horrible, definitely a way she wouldn't like herself or any of her friends to die in. She was snapped out of her own thoughts, however, as her friend started to cry. Nobuyuki had always seemed as someone with strong character to her, someone that would go out of his way to protect others. For such reason it was weird for her to see him like that, vulnerable, crying at the side of the corpse of his dead father. She kneeled next to him, remaining silent while covering his body with her arms. The brown-haired girl pat her friend in the back, moving his head to her shoulder. Nobuyuki started crying harder once he felt the warmth of her shoulder. If she had to be honest, this was the first time she'd have to comfort someone. Fortunately, it seems that her brother's technique is really efficient. She was somewhat worried that it would only work with her, like when she was little and her brother did it, but it did work in the end. Nobuyuki had a vague memory come to mind while he cried on his friend's shoulder. A tall woman with black hair suddenly appeared in his mind, said image vanishing right after appearing. For a moment, he stopped crying, confused by his memory, but he didn't take much longer to remember what had just happened. Thanks, he said with a weak tone, still dropping some tears on her purple shirt. Don't worry, I'm here for you, she answered as she tightened her hug. I'm your friend, after all, and that's what friends do. As would be expected of the afternoon subsequent to an unexpected invasion, a dark sky and rain accompanied the tears and sobs of the people that had gathered in the main square of the village. In front of the crowd, several pictures of some of the shinobi lost in battle were put on an improvised memorial. And in the middle of it, a picture of the recently deceased third Hokage was held in a table, so it was in a higher position than the other ones. 2 torches were placed at opposite sides of it, but they had been put out for a while now. Between the crowd and the pictures of the deceased, which were limited to the most important ones, the elders of the council were standing with their heads lowered. They shared the same black kimono uniform as the rest of the people present, the only thing varying between men and women being the skirt of said kimono. Even after it started raining, they had decided to keep going with the funeral, arguing that mere raining could not prevent them from showing respect to those who deserved it. Nobuyuki had already cried a lot the day prior, but not even that prevented him from doing it again in the ceremony. And close to him, Sakura was also crying as she had also lost her father. Next to her, Naruto was trying to calm her down, imitating what Iruka did all those times he was left alone by everyone as a kid. He even hugged her for a while, but she moved away once she managed to regain her composure. Her mother, a blonde woman, then hugged her from behind while telling her that everything would be okay. Konohamaru continuously attempted to wipe his tears, but it proved to be a tough task as they didn't stop streaming down his face. Asuma had put his hand on the shoulder of his nephew, but he himself wasn't much happier. Gohan was standing next to the kid, and saw in him that scared 5-year-old child that lost his father. He gave the kid a side hug, to which the young Sarutobi answered by hugging the Saiyan with both of his arms. He didn't expect such a reaction from the kid. I know I am still really young, but I also know how it feels to lose someone close to you. Gohan said with a calm tone, just like the one his mother used to calm him down when he was little. I won't lie to you, life can be harsh, really harsh. But you don't have to worry, as you will always have someone that loves you and takes care of you. Really? Konohamaru asked as he wiped his tears with his long blue scarf. As he glanced up, he noticed that he wasn't really all that smaller than Gohan, at least not as much as he expected. Yep, look at your friends over there, the half-blood Saiyan pointed at his two best friends, Moegi and Udon, who were also saddened by the situation. Look at your uncle right here, he then pointed at Asuma, who smiled at the kid while trying to hide his own sadness, and you also have Naruto and me. I see. The kid finally stopped crying as he adjusted his goggles. Then, one day I'll be strong enough to take care of all of you. His eyes were filled determination as he stopped hugging the Saiyan. Even stronger than Grandpa. Gohan remembered how similar to Naruto he used to be, but something was now different. There was no, I'll become Hokage, this time. He smiled kindly at Konohamaru, giving him a thumbs up similar to those his father used to give him while training. I'm sure you will, Gohan said. And before Konohamaru could reply, the elders called everyone to leave the flowers they'd been asked to take for the memorial. Asuma took 2 bouquets of flowers and gave one to the kid. Everyone present in the place started to leave their respective flowers to the improvised monument, one by one. And after almost everyone had left their gift, the memorial was filled with a small mountain of flowers of different colors, shapes and sizes. That day, the Yamanaka flower shop had given the flowers for free. It was a special day, after all. The elders announced that the funeral was over. Everyone, while still sad about their losses, went back home. Life would continue normally the next day, and they needed to rest to be ready for going back to the routine. Excuse me, sir, why was I called here? Gohan asked. It felt weird for him to be called to the office of the Hokage. In the third's former chair, a Junin was looking into a piece of paper, probably an important document. The towers of paper that used to fill the desk all those past times Gohan visited the office were gone. Yuichi seemed to have gone through a boring and tiring day, or at least that's what the Saiyan assumed from seeing his eye bags. And when he took a sip from his cup of tea, he finally noticed the presence of the kid. Oh, sorry, I was busy doing some paperwork. The silver-haired man said as he put the paper away. So, are you the next Hokage, sir? Gohan asked as he sat down on the chair in front of the desk, having been invited to do so. No, I am just covering the obligations of the third while the council decides on a new one. Yuichi shivered at the mere thought of him doing all that paperwork every day for the rest of his life. I'm not made for the job anyways. I see. He cleared his throat before continuing. He expected the man to tell him then what he'd been called there for. And why did you call me here, sir? He asked with a soft voice, not wanting to give a negative impression. Right. I had forgotten. He pushed his blue haori away from the desk, causing it to fall down to the floor. From behind the desk, he took a green vest out, similar to the one he usually wore along his haori. We've been told that you were able to defeat the One Tail by yourself, so we decided that you deserved this. Yuichi had already offered it to Gohan, but something suddenly came to mind that caused him to retrieve it back to his side. I do have something to ask you. Knowing so little about you causes me to doubt, so I apologize. His face turned to a more serious expression. Will you stay in the village and swear loyalty to it? The Saiyan took his time to answer, especially because he was startled by the seriousness in the man's eyes. I don't really have anywhere else to go, sir. This place is totally unknown to me. Before the Junin was able to reply, the kid continued. But there is a problem. What is it? Yuichi was relieved and satisfied for a moment, thinking that he had succeeded on keeping the kid within the borders of the leaf, but those emotions disappeared quickly after hearing that last sentence. I don't think I relate with what being a shinobi means or what it requires. Gohan wasn't able to look at the silver-haired Junin in the eyes, he felt like he had just told him something disrespectful. His surprise was great when he heard a calm voice come from him. So you know what being a shinobi means? Well, we were informed that you visited the library regularly, so it wouldn't surprise me. He said as he put his haori on his lap. What would surprise me, though, is that you got the true meaning of being a shinobi written in a mere book or scroll. I only read about jutsu and about some parts of the history of the village. The Saiyan explained. I think I got the meaning from what I've experienced alongside my teammates. The Chunin exams, kids of my age or even slightly older fighting to death, and for what? For honor. For their home. Yuichi answered the question. Many shinobi don't fight just for fun or to kill, many fight for their families and loved ones in general, even to make a better world. He remembered when he graduated from the academy. Back when I was younger, you were forced to become a shinobi, but now things have changed. And while young ones like you can feel pressured to choose that path, it isn't mandatory to do so anymore. So that's why there is people with other professions. I see, but still, when they choose to become a shinobi they're risking their lives. He hesitated for a moment, but decided to continue with his idea. Don't you think that 11 years old is a bit too young to put your life at risk? My opinion doesn't matter. Yuichi's words were unexpected by the young Saiyan, they decide for themselves, so I don't have the authority to make that decision. The kid seemed to be quite disappointed with that answer, and the Junin noticed it. However, that doesn't change the fact that you can protect them. It seems that's the only way. Gohan raised his voice once again, trying to find any other ways to find an alternative. But does the academy educate for something outside of being a shinobi? Maybe that's the issue. Well, you could say that's the focus, but in the first years of education, general subjects are taught. And in a world so conflictive, it is hard not to focus education towards it, the system itself is built on that. He noticed that Gohan was putting attention, but he still preferred not to give him the explanation of how their society worked and why, he was still too young to understand. At least, that's what he thought. It's complicated, but I think you understand what I meant. And can't the Hokage do something about it? The Saiyan finally asked. Within this borders, yes. He answered calmly. And if the next Hokage is who I think will be, you can be surprised by her ideas. Yuichi explained. When younger, she wanted to change some things, just like you do now. And even if that doesn't happen, maybe you can become the 6th Hokage and change it yourself. Alright then, he seemed to have taken a decision, which provoked a smile from the Junin. For now, I'll continue being a shinobi, because I have to make sure that my friends are okay. He remained silent for a couple of seconds, then raised his head to give the man a kind grin. Thanks for your time, sir, and sorry for bothering. Don't worry, it was fun to talk to you. He gave the vest to Gohan, who put it in right after taking it. Looks good on you. Thank you, sir. He smiled once again, and waved at the man before leaving the office. As the door closed, he took back the paper he'd put away right before starting the conversation with the kid. It seemed to be a record, as it had the name of some ninja along with information about them. Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and Tsunade Senju figured next to the name of the now deceased Hiruzen Sarutobi. So there's nothing on where she is. He thought as he read the title of the document, Team Hiruzen. Once again, the door of the office opened, this time gaining the silver-haired man's attention. From it, a tall man with long, white hair entered. He waved at Yuichi while having a wide smile on his face. Ready for the meeting? No way. Naruto exclaimed as he saw Gohan arrive at the place. You're a Chunin now. That's amazing. The blonde Genin and Konohamaru were waiting outside of Ichiraku for their friend to arrive. The small ramen restaurant was almost empty, as usual. Both of the Saiyan's friends' faces were filled with a smile once they saw him wearing the green vest. It isn't that comfortable, but I don't really mind. He preferred wearing a cape like Piccolo's, but he figured that he'd never have the chance to do it again. So, Gohan's closer than ourselves. Konohamaru said. Seems like we have to train harder, right? He turned to the blonde Genin, who nodded with great determination. Yeah, one day I'll beat both of you, believe it. He pointed at the Saiyan first, and then at his childhood friend. I'd like to see that. Gohan replied as he entered Ichiraku, inviting his two friends to do the same. It was probably the second or third time he went there, so he wasn't really unfamiliar with the restaurant. They sat down in the counter, the only place to sit in except for two tables outside the small local. Toiki was there to receive them, as happy as he always was to see them, although this time he seemed to be slightly happier, probably because of the Saiyan's best. From behind the middle-aged man, a younger girl came out, probably coming out of the kitchen. Oh, hey Ayame. Naruto greeted enthusiastically. Gohan and Konohamaru also waved at the girl with a similar amount of enthusiasm. And of course, Toiki's daughter waved back at them, walking to her father's side while she did. What will you want this time? She asked with a grin on her face. I'll have the same as always. The blonde genin answered. I'll have the same as Naruto. Konohamaru replied with great determination. I think I will have 5 bowls of what they ordered. Gohan said as he scratched his chin. Alright, 7 bowls of ramen coming. She said energetically while grabbing her father's arm, taking him to the kitchen to help her. Gohan couldn't help but smile at the girl's passion for her profession. It made him happy to see that people could be passionate there with something different than being a shinobi. The brown-haired girl seemed really young, which caused the Saiyan to suppose that she was never a shinobi. And what will you do now that the exams are over? Naruto asked the Saiyan, causing the third's grandson to also turn to look at him. Well, I'm not sure, maybe I'll go on missions with my team, like before. He got into his thoughts for a moment before continuing the conversation. Do you think we'll get missions to repair the village? I'm sure you've noticed that the invasion left many damages on buildings. Fortunately not Ichiraku, though. Yeah, that's good. And I don't know about the missions, that would be somewhat boring. Naruto replied, only getting a disappointed look from the Saiyan. I don't think that's boring, I actually think that would be fun. Gohan responded. I love helping people, and it's been a while since I helped anyone. Here's the food. Konohamaru cheered as both the middle-aged man and the young girl came out of the kitchen with the 7 bowls of ramen they'd ordered. They were served on their place, and as soon as they were given the sticks, they started eating as fast as they could. After finishing his bowl, Naruto stole one from Gohan, which started a stick fight. Konohamaru saw the chance and took it, stealing one bowl from the Saiyan and eating it calmly while he fought against the blonde genin. Toiki and Ayame laughed as both kids used the sticks as swords. In the same floor as the Hokage's office, another important room stood. The council of the village held their meetings there. Regularly they'd discuss important issues with the Hokage, but this time it would be different as the third died during Orochimaru's invasion. Along with the elders, 2 other important shinobi for the Leaf were in the room. Jiraiya and Yuichi sat down in front of the elders, who remained in their special seats. Seeing that both of you reject the position, which are your proposals for the next Hokage? The elderly woman asked. We have also considered Danzo Shimura as the ideal successor to Lord Third. I propose Tsunade Senju. The man of the long, white hair said with a relaxed tone. I also propose Tsunade Senju. The silver-haired Junin said as he crossed his arms. Danzo. Really? And do you know what her current location is? Such information is unknown to us, and I believe it also is for you. The old man glanced at Jiraiya, who stood up immediately after. Nope, but I'll find her. He stretched his arms as he spoke, which caused the elder to sigh. The replacement is urgent. The village cannot persist without a proper leader. The old woman protested. However, she was stopped by the other member of the council, who beckoned her to calm down. I'm sure Yuichi can take care of that while we're out searching for Tsunade. He glanced at the Junin, whose face showed deep suffering. Right. The silver-haired man nodded, keeping his glance down. If he was alone in that room, he was sure he would cry. The mere thought of the paperwork made him lose the will to live. For how long will it be? Jiraiya will be given a month to find Tsunade. If he isn't able to do so by the end of that time, Danzo will be chosen as the 5th Hokage. As the old man spoke, Yuichi fell down to the floor. Not only would he have to deal with the paperwork, now the decision of whether Shimura becomes Hokage is on the Frog Sage's hands. Understood. Jiraiya calmly nodded. Oh, and before I leave, I want to take the kid with me. Go ahead. Both elders said in unison. Just make sure he comes back, you know the QB is a vital resource we cannot lose. Alright. He waved them off before exiting the room. Good luck, Yuichi. His eyes slowly opened in parallel to the sound of the door closing. The white walls on the opposite side of the room slowly became clearer while he regained consciousness. An elder man sat down in the chair next to his bed, staring at him. Nobuyuki was fully woken up by the man, whose presence astonished him. Once he recovered from the scare, he identified the man. The bandages covering the upper right half of his face were already familiar to Nobuyuki, and they even became relatable as he'd been forced to wear bandages on his legs and arms since his fight against that redhead sand nin. With the little strength he could gather, he waved at the elder while drawing a smile on his own face. I heard that you should be recovered in a couple of weeks, said Danzo, whose sight was now directed towards the bandaged legs of the young shinobi. I hope it's true. Nobuyuki smiled kindly as he tried to get up and sit on the bed, but the elder man beckoned him not to move. Sir, about Anbu. He purposefully ignored the previous comment. Do you think I could join Anbu after I recover? Or is it already impossible? If the recovery is optimal, of course. Danzo grinned, however it was not directed to the kid, as it was apparent, but it was a direct consequence of his own success. He got the perfect substitute for Itachi. And soon, he would become the fifth Hokage. Since the death of his father, Hyuga had been considering more seriously the proposal of the old man. Without his father, he would now have to live for himself, and what better way to start than joining the elite of the village? His only regret was the absence of his father, who he though would be proud of him becoming an elite shinobi. Then I'll make my best effort to become an elite shinobi. I'm sure you will. For a moment, Nobuyuki noticed something weird on Danzo's facial expression. The elder finally stood up, smiling kindly at the boy. I'll be following your progress closely. Whatever it was, it had already faded. Nobuyuki waved him off, at least before being surprised by the elder opening the door exactly at the same moment when his doctor was about to enter. Perhaps he was too sleepy to notice the steps, or too distracted to care. Either way, the medical nin that entered the room next seemed to be as surprised as he was himself. The medical nin was a young woman. Apart from her height, her blue eyes called Nobuyuki's attention. He wasn't sure, but something about those eyes felt familiar to him. Her brown hair wasn't long enough to reach her shoulder, although it still managed to go down past her sharp chin. She wore the same outfit Genma did, the only difference being that she didn't have the same hat his sensei had. Oh, so you're awake already, she said while taking a pen out of one of the many pockets the vest possessed. Before continuing with the interview, she opened the little notebook she had on her hand and sat down on the same chair Danzo had been sitting before. Alright, have you been having headaches again? While the sun was setting in the horizon, the long blue scarf of a kid was being pushed back by the wind, although it remained on his neck thanks to the good knot he had learned from his grandfather. Next to him, an older, black-haired boy was also sitting down on the grass. A green vest was laying on the floor, next to the boy of the purple GI. Both observed in silence as the sky left its previous blue color and adopted a more orange one, which contrasted just as well with the green of the forest further from the walls. Gohan, for a moment, wondered if being stranded there was really all that bad. After all, that place was also beautiful, that place also had good people. 16 would love that place, that forest that surrounded the village he was now a part of, the half-Saiyan was sure of it. However, it became undeniable that there was also many horrible things filling that world, dwarfing any good thing Gohan could find, or at least in his own perspective. Earlier that day, Naruto had to leave the two of them alone as Kakashi called him for a reunion of Team 7. It was unfortunate, but they knew that could happen at any time. Gohan, Konohamaru raised his voice while continued staring at the already darkening sky, would you help me become stronger? The Saiyan heard the question clearly, but still took his time to answer it. He had grown really close with the kid, he could say that he was like a little brother to him. However, it was for that same reason that he just couldn't train the kid. Contrary to what his father would do, he was unable to endanger the kid's life indirectly through training him. Well, that single word was enough for the third's grandson to figure what the answer would be. It seemed that his road towards the same desk his grandfather once sat in was going to be rough, but he knew he had to be ready for such a thing. He hoped to have the possibility of catching up with Naruto, who was already being trained by one of the legendary Sannin. A realization came to the Saiyan's mind, though. While it was true that he would motivate the kid into endangering his life as a shinobi by training him, wouldn't he do it anyways? His dream was to be just like his grandfather, so isn't it inevitable for Konohamaru to become a shinobi? Don't. Konohamaru was suddenly interrupted by the voice of his friend. I can help you with that, yep. Gohan said while smiling at the kid of the blue scarf. While it was inevitable for Konohamaru to end up as a shinobi, what wasn't inevitable was his death at the hands of another shinobi. He would train his friend to both decrease the odds of him dying and to help him accomplish his dream. Fighting was starting to seem as something inevitable, and not only in that case, so what better way than to prepare for that in the best way? Really? Konohamaru became ecstatic almost immediately after receiving the answer. He started to jump and celebrate, even visualizing himself as the Hokage. Thanks a lot, Gohan. For some reason, it felt weird to him that a kid would get this excited about fighting. He guessed that was the way his father behaved, but he was never able to witness it. Maybe it was also kind of egotistical for him to assume that every kid should normally react to fighting in the same manner he did. In any case, he wasn't sure how to feel about it. The only thing he knew was that kids shouldn't even have the option Konohamaru had. Crowds of people filled the streets of the village hidden in the leaves, entering and exiting buildings. It was a sunny day, so it was natural for people to go out and enjoy the sunlight. And as would be expected, every restaurant was full of people, most even had absurdly long queues. Well, except for a certain humble ramen shop in the outskirts of the village, that is. In said ramen shop, a group of 10 kids was having lunch. Normally, the small restaurant wouldn't be able to handle that number of clients, but recently they'd got successful enough to invest in a couple of tables to put outside the shop. This success could be attributed to Naruto, who normally took every single one of his friends to eat there. How did you recover so fast? A blonde girl asked to her teammate sitting next to her. Surprisingly, in a couple of days the Saiyan's injuries were healed. Well, I'm not sure, that's just the way it has always been for me. He scratched his messy, black hair while talking. Shikamaru sighed at the answer, reflecting disappointment through it, as if he already expected it. He took a sip of his glass of water before speaking. Are you even human? I think it's amazing that Gohan heals his wounds that fast and that he's so strong. Naruto added after finishing his fourth bowl of ramen. That's because you're dumb. Shikamaru answered before laying back on his chair, placing his hands behind his head. Well, I do think it's impressive. The pink-haired girl sitting between the young Avenger and Uzumaki added. Maybe it's an ability from Gohan's clan or something. Do you think there would be a clan with an ability like that? Cuz I've surely never heard of it. Kiba replied after finally finishing his own bowl of ramen. Akamaru followed by barking, probably showing support at his partner's statement. Impossible, no clan has any better abilities than those of the Uchiha clan. Sasuke explained, his eyes set on the people passing by. He was sitting in a wheelchair, consequence of him trying to fight against the tailed beast and being severely injured in the process. In the week since, his injured arm had gotten better, but his broken leg would need some more time. He could at least be thankful of not receiving worse injuries, like Lee's. Kiba rolled his eye at Uchiha's comment, finding it annoying even when he expected him to say something similar. An uncomfortable silence then surrounded the genin, everyone being unable to think of something to say, even when being that many. A presence suddenly got them by surprise. A really tall man was standing behind Naruto, who was too focused in eating his fifth bowl of ramen to notice. Everyone was either caught by surprise or even scared at such a thing, although Sakura managed to recognize the long and spiky white hair. Oh, good morning, Jiraiya-sama. Sakura respectfully said as she stood up, bowing at the man before sitting down again. Everyone but a certain Saiyan recognized the name, and proceeded to do the same as the pink-haired girl. Gohan raised his eyebrow in confusion as that name started to ring a bell, although he was still unable to say who he was exactly. Pervy Sage. Naruto yelled enthusiastically. Where were you? Did you escape because of the invasion? Coward. Nah, kid, I was just busy doing some research, you know. He started to blush as he remembered his most recent journeys. My next novel will be my best one to date. Sakura only managed to cringe at this, while her blonde teammate fell back in disappointment. You're such a pervert. Meanwhile, the rest of the genin didn't understand what was happening. And while some could notice the blush of the Sannin, they weren't really able to fully understand until Naruto accused him of being a pervert. Shikamaru, Kiba and Choji were sure that they would witness one of the most legendary shinobi in history beat their blonde friend's ass. Sasuke, however, could do no more than sigh at his teammates' behavior. Oh, right, it's Jiraiya from the legendary Sannin. Gohan said out loud, catching everyone's attention. Once he noticed he'd said it, he blushed out of embarrassment. Huh. The tall man of the red houri raised his eyebrow in confusion, but then decided to ignore the comment. Anyways, Naruto, I have to go and search for the next Hokage, wanna come? Yeah, Naruto yelled as he raised his punch and smiled widely. Everyone but Sakura, even the workers of Ichiraku, cringed at how casually the Sannin told the kid about such an important mission. Hey, wanna come with us again? Naruto turned to his pink-haired teammate. She shook her head in response. I have to take care of mom because of, you know. Oh, yeah, right. He scratched the back of his head. After a couple of seconds of silence, he gave her a thumbs up. Then I'll see you when I come back. Asuma walked through an alley behind an old neighborhood. Next to him, a Junin of long black hair and intense red eyes kept his pace while her sight was focused on the trees and flowers that could be seen at the exit of the alley. She'd always been interested in plants, so she couldn't avoid getting distracted when she passed next to some. Oh, you're seeing the flowers again. The son of the third Hokage scratched his nape, uncomfortable as he'd been talking alone for the past couple of minutes. Kurenai looked back as she covered her mouth, snapping out of the trance the plants had set her into. I'm so sorry. No problem, don't worry. He waved off her worry, even though he did feel ignored. I told you that we need to hurry as I have to meet my team soon for a new mission. Oh, but can't you arrive a little bit late? Like Kakashi does every time. Kurenai laughed softly. Asuma followed by laughing himself while he shook his head in denial. No, I can't. The pair finally exited the alley, reaching the side of a river close to the east walls of the village. Previous Hokage had avoided to build there so the river, which was the main source of water of the leaf, wouldn't be contaminated or blocked. For such, the river was only surrounded with vegetation and a small concrete path that led back to the urban part of the village. However, there was something different about said path, and that was noticed by the Junin of the red eyes. She put her hand in front of her companion's chest while she focused in trying to figure what was off. Asuma immediately started looking at every direction, although he was unable to spot anything. There. Her hand finally got away from his chest, shifting its position to point towards the end of the path. It should turn to the right, towards the bridge, and there is no path that takes to the bridge. It was true, Sarutobi noticed how, even though the bridge was there, the path continued forward and didn't take the turn it should. He scratched his beard while he thought of the possibilities. Genjutsu, isn't it? It is. Kurenai coldly answered as she did several hand signs, closing her eyes before disabling the effect of the genjutsu. Their suspicion was confirmed once the path did seem to connect with the bridge. Go out, we already discovered your genjutsu. Water style. Great Water Dragon. Asuma reacted immediately, grabbing his companion by her waist and pushing her forward with as much strength as he could gather. His effort proved useful as they successfully evaded the attack of the water dragon, which faded into a puddle of water right after hitting the ground. Sarutobi stood back up, spotting the user of the water dragon jutsu. A tall man, with a black cloak with red clouds in it, went out of the river, facing the two Junin of the leaf. His skin was blue and he even had gills, though in spite of that he still had blue and spiky hair on his head and a nose. His headband had the sliced symbol of the village hidden in the mist. He smiled once he recognized the Junin, showing off his fangs. Akatsuki. Kurenai plainly said while a drop of sweat went down her forehead. Maybe even an ex-swordsman of the mist. He wields the Samahata, so it does seem like it. Asuma added as he discreetly looked for anyone that could be with him. They're always in pairs, or at least that's what Jiraiya's inform said. I hope Kurenai manages to find him or her, we cannot risk a surprise attack. The man of the blue noticed the movement of the eyes and realized what he was trying, which got a laugh out of him. The name's Kisame, it's nice to meet you, he bowed, son of the third Hokage. I see you've done your research. Asuma said as he threw his cigarette away, it being stepped on by Sarutobi to avoid a fire. Kurenai started to look in every direction, every time more erratically than before. She didn't manage to find anything, not even a trace of any genjutsu. Could it be that a member of Akatsuki went there by himself? It surely didn't make sense. Did that mean that Jiraiya's information is wrong? But even if it was wrong, wouldn't it be irrational for someone to enter the leaf alone? You seem to have done your own too. He grabbed the sword he held on his back. It was big compared to the normal size of an average sword, but specially wide. It was also covered by bandages, leaving only the handle visible. You know about my Samahata and you're desperately looking for my partner. The red-eyed Junin was caught off guard by the realization of the swordsman. She tried to ignore it and look for the other one, but she knew she'd made it really obvious. So you do have a partner, Asuma replied as he grabbed his trench knives from the frontal pockets of his vest, closing his fists with them on and putting them in front of his face. I knew it didn't make sense for you to come alone. Kisame shook his head with a grin on his face. I wouldn't recommend you engaging in a bukijutsu battle against a swordsman of the mist. What did you came here for? Sarutobi firmly asked, ignoring the previous comment from the shark man. We came here for the 9 tails, of course. A grim, though familiar voice filled the Leaf Junin's ears. From the floor, the figure of the assassin of the Uchiha clan emerged. Long, black hair falling from both sides of his face, barely reaching his chin. He wore the same cloak as his partner, though the neck of it was opened on his own. His headband had the symbol of the leaf, though sliced in half. Both Junin couldn't help but to flinch at the mere sight of Itachi Uchiha. Asuma was the first to recover his composure, giving the opposing couple of Sharingan a firm look to deal with. This inspired the second Leaf Junin, who only needed a nod from his partner to make the first move. She made several hand seals, which worked as a signal for Asuma to jump on the black-haired shinobi. Itachi moved to the side and evaded the attack without much effort, but Sarutobi merely kept on running towards the man of the blue skin. As the trench knives clashed against the sword, Uchiha suddenly found himself submerged in a totally dark space. He recognized the jutsu almost immediately, and he couldn't say that he expected it. I was kind of disappointed when you failed to locate me through my own genjutsu, but it seems that you do no advanced genjutsu. Itachi said as he moved forward, where he'd last seen the red-eyed kunoichi. I hope you keep the pace. He softly said, making hand seals at the same time. The dark space faded, though he was still unable to spot the Junin. He looked back and noticed the fight between Sarutobi and his own partner, but that wasn't what he was looking for, so he didn't bother watching them. Once he turned back, Uchiha saw a fist at scarce centimeters from his face. He bent down slightly to evade the punch, and then aimed a kick toward her ankles to unbalance her. Kurenai jumped just in time, taking the little time she knew she had and making several hand seals while she was still in the air. Then, she disappeared into a bunch of flower petals. Itachi sighed at the sight of the petals. Close to them, Asuma was struggling to keep up with the swordsman, whose weapon he barely managed to contain. His trench knives were really useful in short-range fights, but it was difficult to get close to an enemy with a sword that alone was able to block many of his attempts. His opponent knew it, although he also knew he'd have to get close at times if he wants to kill the Leaf Nin. Kisame grinned as his opponent took a step back. He aimed his sword to the opening between his arms, towards his chest. Asuma managed to put one of his trench knives on the way, barely blocking the attack thanks to the concentrated chakra in his weapon. Kisame started laughing softly as he saw the blue chakra coming out of the weapon, but his laughter was suddenly interrupted. Kisame, it's time to go. Itachi announced, blocking a kick from Kurenai with his forearm while looking at his partner. What? I said it's time to retreat, it isn't convenient for the mission if the entire village comes after us. Uchiha explained, still holding the leg of the kunoichi. However, he finally used it to throw her into the river, even against her efforts of trying to get her leg out. The man of the blue skin jumped backwards and put his sword on his back. Itachi disappeared into a bunch of crows, which confused Sarutobi. And as he turned back, Kisame had left the place as well. Asuma then jumped into the river to help Kurenai, though he found out that she managed to step on the water before falling. We have to inform the rest about this. Kurenai said once she saw her partner's face. Itachi Uchiha is back in the leaf. Asuma is late. That's weird, Ino pointed out after standing for nearly an hour waiting along her teammates. Choji ate the last one of his chips, starting to realize how much time his sensei had actually taken. Something must have happened, this is completely out of character from him. A leaf fell from the tree in which they were standing under, using its shadow to handle the heat of the day better. The leaf landed on Shikamaru's forehead, which caused the latter to grab it and throw it away. He sighed before standing up from the floor. I guess I'll be leaving then, some more sleeping would hurt. He blinked as he turned to the opposite direction where his teammates were standing. To his surprise, the first thing that got in the way of his sight was Asuma's face. You're going where exactly? Gohan couldn't help but to burst out laughing at his teammate, and the others were sure to follow the Saiyan. Shikamaru went from surprise to annoyance as the laughter filled his ears. Anyways, I'm sorry for being so late, but an urgent matter presented itself. Sarutobi explained while he ignited a cigarette, which he used to smoke after explaining himself. And for such reason we'll be going on a mission along Team Guy outside the village. For now, however, we'll go on the original mission as the other team is already busy with another mission. The Saiyan stood up, shaking off the dust that had gotten into his GI. Then, he asked what the mission was about. He didn't feel specially enthusiastic, especially as he expected the typical ninja mission that would involve killing someone, or at least fighting someone. The invasion didn't leave him with the best sensations about Shinobi and the system of where he lived, and walking through destroyed neighborhoods, and seeing the impoverished villagers. Asuma noticed something from merely looking into his onyx-colored eyes. Something not particularly positive. We'll be helping in the rebuilding of a neighborhood in the outskirts of the village. To Sarutobi's surprise, the Saiyan's eyes became brighter, slightly so, but still enough to be noticed from a considerable distance. Gohan, for once, was excited about a mission. One of the things he enjoys the most is helping people, in whichever way possible. He hated the sight of innocent people suffering. And when are we starting? The Saiyan asked with a slight grin on his face. Oh, I see you're enthusiastic about this one, said Asuma, who was smiling as he finally saw his student with great enthusiasm about a mission. That's great. We are going right now, so get ready. Thank you for watching What If Gohan Was Sent to Naruto World and Became a Part of Shinobi Part 6. Hope you like my video. Please subscribe, like and share Roranoa TV for more fanfiction crossover videos.